Have the playoff super wildcard weekend on deck here. We were supposed to have 2 games today, 3 games tomorrow, and then 1 game Monday night. Buffalo Bills, Pittsburgh Steelers was actually moved to Monday. So now we have basically a doubleheader 3 days in a row with the Texans and Browns today and the Dolphins and Chiefs today. Expected to be a very weather impacted game tonight on Saturday Night Football, but should be a fun slate of wildcard games. I'm pretty excited to see kind of how these things shake out. Both of our teams are in action. Obviously, you guys playing the
4:30 tomorrow.
Yeah, the Packers at 4:30 tomorrow, and then the Bucs and Eagles playing on the Monday night game. Of course, the Eagles being a sworn enemy of myself as a Buccaneers fan, a early 2000s rival. So I never want to be losing to the Eagles. It's like the second worst team I would want to lose to, the Saints being the only other one.
We got a lot of storylines this weekend. So, I mean, first of all, starting with the first game, Browns versus Texans. This is kind of like the Deshaun Watson Bowl, if you will, even though Deshaun Watson's not even playing in it. And then, I mean, if you move on to Miami versus KC, obviously Tyreek Hill on one side, Patrick Mahomes kind of going to bat. Tyreek Hill saying what he's said. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes being the best quarterback in the league. Some blood there. Green Bay versus Dallas, one of the historic rivalries in the NFL. I mean, if I were to pick like a 7 seed that I really wanted that symbolic nature of for the Cowboys, it would have been the Packers. Because I mean, what's NFL playoffs without Packers versus Cowboys? You know what I mean?
Rams I mean, Lions. Normally it means that in the last 40 years, neither of these teams have been good at the same time. But in the 60s, yeah, for sure, this would have been a historic rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, even since then, like you do have a couple playoff matchups in the 2000s. I believe we had one in, I mean, like we have 2 in the 2010s for sure, 2014, 2016. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, that era, he completely dominated us. Brett Favre in the 90s, Troy Aikman in the 90s. Like you had some really, really valuable teams. It's kind of like the Cowboys had their dynasty in the early 90s, and then when Brett Favre and the Packers kind of took over in the late 90s, we saw what that was able to do. And then the other few games, I mean, you got Rams versus Lions, both quarterbacks kind of having their revenge on the franchise.
Literally the team that picked them first overall going up against the quarterback that and they were literally like traded for each other as well, which is pretty cool. And then the other games there with the Bills Steelers game, I mean, the weather should still, I'd imagine the weather will still be a factor tomorrow even, right? Or on Monday, sorry.
For sure. It's just good. Like it's apparently supposed to lessen down a little bit. And in terms of that, I mean, there's also historic teams because they've had some big battles in the 90s, for example. The 90s, the Cowboys played the Bills in the Super Bowl 2 times, the Steelers in the Super Bowl, their other Super Bowl. So they were both competitive teams. And I'm
kind of annoyed we got robbed of like a snow game though. Like that would have been kind of dope if it was like a big time snow game.
Miami's expected to snow pretty hard. No, in KC.
Right, but like the Bills Steelers game, this like tomorrow would have been like it would have been fun
chaos
if it was like a complete trudging through the snow of Leonard Fournette in the first round. That would have been hilarious. But anyways, we're gonna actually go through and let's preview kind of all these games, talk about the storylines like we said, and actually pick them and eventually come to a Super Bowl champion. You know, we have only a couple minutes left here, so it should be fun.
Appreciate the super chat, by the way, Corey. Go Cowboys. I cannot wait for tomorrow. But like Corey said, previewing these matchups, kind of giving you an outline for each of our own Super Bowl predictions, our brackets. And if you guys want to screenshot our picks and then throw it back at us when, I don't know, the Browns end up beating the frickin' Rams in the Super Bowl, then feel free.
That would be wild if that's what ended up happening. So let's kick it off with the game that's about to kick off here. We have the Texans and Browns, obviously at home in a dome for Houston. Cleveland probably would be a big beneficiary if the game was in Cleveland and in like weather conditions, because you know they're the defensive team, and you know CJ Stroud has been able to throw the ball pretty well. Obviously, last time these two teams played each other, Amari Cooper went absolutely nuclear and dropped like 265 yards. Joe Flacco had a monster game. I think everybody's kind of penciling in the same game script. And I think there's a reason that DeMeco Ryans is up for like coach of the year. I don't think he's going to let that happen again. So if everybody's just, you know, smashing their overs on Amari Cooper receiving yards, honestly, man, I actually like the Texans in this game. I think this is a good game environment for them. I think that the Browns are playing a little bit down on defense right now. Is Denzel Ward going to play? Because I know that was a concern.
He's expected to play. And it's funny because I actually favor the Browns in this matchup. And the reason being is that historic pass rusher with Myles Garrett, how well their defense has been playing this year. If Denzel Ward's been being able to play, obviously their secondary has been phenomenal in their own right. And it's also an experienced quarterback versus a rookie quarterback. And typically rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs, like we don't usually see that. Like, for example, Dak Prescott, 13-3 year, 2016, lost Aaron Rodgers, a veteran quarterback in his first round of the playoffs. That's a little bit of a narrative, but at the same time, Joe Flacco, we give him heck for, those middle years of his Baltimore tenure before they replace him with Lamar Jackson. But this is an experienced playoff quarterback. And I honestly look at this with their defense playing against Houston, with the way Joe Flacco has been playing as of late. I personally favor the Browns, but I do agree with you. This is probably one of the bigger 50-50 toss-ups of the entire slate.
Yeah, like I actually want to look real quick what I'm going to pull this up so we know kind of for the rest of these games as well, like where the money is and what's kind of going on in these games. So right now Houston is a 2-point underdog at home. So if I'm betting this game, I'm 100% taking Houston in the 2 points because they're at home. Like I want the home team who's a home dog. A lot of the money is still on Cleveland, about 56% of the cash, but the public is heavily on Cleveland. So the money itself is kind of balanced between the two. So it looks like everybody's kind of in agreement that this could go either way. I tend to think that DeMeco Ryans will come out with a better game plan to stop Amari Cooper and Joe Flacco in the passing game. So I actually really like the Texans in this one. We're going to do this kind of as like a unit and come to a consensus here. Do you have like a strong lean here, or how do you want to do this?
So I do prefer the Browns personally. So our splits are 1-1 here. If anybody in chat, we'll let you guys kind of field this one to break the tie.
Yeah, I mean, no Tank Dell has really hurt the Texans. Honestly, I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, like CJ Stroud played so well against the Colts. I still think that this team is going to be able to hold up pretty well against the Browns defense and be able to move the ball consistently. And I worry that like the luster of having Joe Flacco off for like 2 weeks or whatever is going to maybe kill some of the fire that he was playing with before they rested all their starters in week 18 against Cincinnati. So I actually feel quite strongly that the Texans will win this game. I think everybody's picking the Browns as the upset favorite to go on a run this year. I think they're going to get squashed in round one.
I really like the Browns here. So we are like complete inverse here. We'll let chat decide this. So Browns, Texans, Browns play.
Do we want to use like one overrule per round of the playoffs? Like when we have a tie, like each of us can use a tiebreaker.
Sure.
I would like to use my tiebreaker on this game.
Sure.
Because I think there's a couple other games that are pretty close matchups too. So we might have another tie here.
I mean, I know where I'm using mine because I know we disagree on a certain spot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I figured I'm gonna use mine on the Texans. So we're gonna get the Texans to the divisional round. The next game chronologically is the one tonight, Chiefs and Dolphins, expected to be very horrible weather. I think the common narrative there would be, oh, you got a Florida team coming into Arrowhead. It's gonna be like -5 degrees or whatever. The spread right now is Kansas City -5. The cash is actually slightly favoring the Dolphins in terms of the spread, but a lot of the money line cash is 83% of it is on Kansas City. So people expecting Kansas City to take care of business. The unders catching some steam is 43.5 in this one. I don't know. From a matchup perspective, I think that Kansas City does match up quite well with Miami because Raheem Mostert's banged up. We're not 100% on if he's going to play or not. Jalen Waddle, I don't know if he's been ruled out or in yet.
Weather.
Yeah, it's inclement weather. I think the Dolphins are a high-flying passing attack. The Chiefs generally would match up good because they've been pretty strong against the pass in general. But then you factor in the weather as well. That kind of takes the wind out of Miami's sails. We saw last year with Miami, they had a 7 seed. They come in and they had like Skylar Thompson playing quarterback because everybody got hurt. And this might be another case of Miami. Just they peaked at the wrong time. They were peaking in September, October, and November, and not when it mattered.
Yeah, no, I would agree there. If I were to like kind of see how this game plays out, I would probably lean around a 23-20 Chiefs win, 21-17, somewhere in that ballpark. So like you kind of mentioned, I do like the Dolphins covering given the weather. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. Typically you want to bet the underdog to cover in that instance, especially if it's a larger spread, which 4.5 in this instance would be. And I feel confident in the Chiefs winning by a nail biter, winning by a field goal, winning by like 4 type of points. Really what it comes down to for me as well is the better defense and inclement weather and the best quarterback in the league. That is the Kansas City case. I understand the pass catchers might be a concern once you play a team like Buffalo, once you play a team like Baltimore that can put up a lot of points on the other end with bad weather conditions. But in this matchup, given how well their defense has been playing, and like I said, with number 15 under center, I got to lean the Chiefs at home.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Eagles game as well, but I think with both of the Super Bowl participants from last year, they're both clearly not the same teams that they were. And I think if they win a game, it'll be wild card round, and then they probably get bounced in the divisional round. That's kind of how I feel about both teams. But regardless, I mean, Travis Kelce could still turn it on. Rashee Rice has kind of been ascending at the right time as well. But yeah, I think the Chiefs should be able to take care of business. In terms of like my playoff best ball drafts, I actually went through and I went and evaluated kind of all the teams that are dead, all the teams that are alive. And it looks like my fandom for this slate of games for Super Wildcard weekend is going to rely primarily on Dallas, because on both of my big mitten teams, I have a lot of Cowboys in addition to my gauntlet teams. Then Kansas City, they were my most common AFC team that I was kind of running a lot of my stacks back with. And then I also have a couple really strong Detroit teams and some really strong Buffalo teams. So those are probably the teams that I'm going to be relying on. I'm going to be hoping, obviously they don't play this round, but Baltimore gets bounced in the divisional round, because I did not get a lot of Baltimore Ravens. I did not grab a lot of Los Angeles Rams. I know you did. I did not grab a lot of Texans or Buccaneers or Browns. I was mainly just, you know what, give me a lot of the top end seeds. I think the 2 and 3 seeds in each conference are pretty strong, and the rest of the like wild cards I don't think are going to do a whole lot of damage, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But moving on to Bills Steelers, we don't have.
Well, let's go to the Cowboys Packers, because we're going to go kind of in order of when these games kick off here. So
I forgot
Cowboys
this game
Packers,
got moved.
Yeah, it got moved. Yeah, so Cowboys Packers, I mean, it's pretty easy to say this one's straightforward. I mean, the Cowboys are 7-point home favorites. They've played really well at home. The Packers are catching a lot of steam, both on the money line. 73% of the money is on the money line. It's a plus 269, and also plus 7 as well. They're catching a lot of steam. The sharps versus the public is also quite split too. Like, all of the money is on the Cowboys public wise, but the sharps are actually hammering the Packers. I think it makes sense. I think the Packers are a better team than given credit for. They're probably capable of going on a little bit of a run. But I think that the Cowboys are too strong of a 2 seed. If they had gone up against like a weaker 2 seed, like the Lions or, the Eagles maybe still hold the 2 seed or something like that, I think this would be everybody's favorite upset spot. Like, if the Eagles still had the 2 seed, everybody would be picking the Packers right now.
I completely agree. And the reason why the Sharps are going to be on the Packers is 7 points. It's a lot of points. And Jordan Love is second in the league, only behind Dak Prescott in terms of touchdown passes. Like, you got a young second-year quarterback who, I believe since week 11, he's had nearly 20 touchdowns and only like 3 turnovers. Like, you're getting a young quarterback playing his best ball at the right time. The receivers are playing really well. But what I keep boiling it back down to is, if you were to take the personnel groups, including quarterback, how many advantages do the Packers actually have? Cowboys have the better quarterback. The Cowboys have the better overall offense. The Cowboys
in totality, the Packers offense is it's hard to stop them if they're all playing well, because there's so many guys that can contribute. Like, whereas the Cowboys, it's very top heavy offense.
Top heavy for sure, but even so, this is still the top scoring team in the league for a reason. They're up there in every single passing metric. Dak, CeeDee Lamb is, in my opinion, the best connection in the NFL, especially at this current point. And then, I mean, defensively, it's just a complete mismatch. Like, Joe Barry, what he's been able to do with that Packers defense, they've been a bottom 5 defense this year. You're playing against a Cowboys defense or a Cowboys offense that has averaged 38 points per game at home this year. This screams to me like it's a 38-27 game. It either finishes 38-27, or maybe the Packers get a backdoor cover. It ends up being like, I don't know, 38-35 because they scored a touchdown with like a minute 14 left, missed the onside, and the Cowboys took a knee. That's kind of how I envision this game playing out.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the Sharps too. I just think 7 points is a little high, but I actually think the Cowboys, like, I don't think it'll be in doubt that they win this game. I just think that the cover might be live for the Packers there. So I'm kind of on the same page as you there. Sunday night game is the Lions and Rams, I believe, which is the battle there of the players that were taken first overall by each respective team. The Lions obviously draft Matthew Stafford first overall in the late 2000s. And then the Rams drafting Jared Goff in 2016 first overall. They were traded basically for each other. The Rams won a Super Bowl. The Lions, this kind of upstart franchise, barely missed the playoffs last year. I know me and you were both hammering them in playoff best ball last year, but they just narrowly missed the playoffs. They did actually squash the Packers' ability to make the playoffs, though. So
Which let the Seahawks make it.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is the direction that you were talking about when you said you want to use your veto, basically the tiebreaker on the Lions-Rams game. I'll make the case for the Lions side because I do think the Lions will win this game. When I look at Detroit, again, the Rams are catching 80% of the steam on the spread, which is currently 3 points, 91% of the money on the money line for the Rams as well. So people are very much in agreement with you that this is the upset spot. Everybody's thinking, hey, one lower seed's going to take down a higher seed. It's probably Lions Rams. And I don't disagree with that. But I think what the Lions do well is they don't really play undisciplined football. And I think that's sometimes a problem for Matthew Stafford. But at the same time, the weapons on the Rams offense could really, really put it to the Lions defense, which has been pretty up and down all season. The Lions, they want to play their brand of football. They want to run the ball. They want to, play controlled offense and not make too many mistakes. But we all know Jared Goff is live to make some stupid decisions sometimes. So both of these quarterbacks, I think it's really going to come down to how they play. If Jared Goff has his patented, keep the ball out of harm's way, get the guys that you need to get the ball, like Amon-Ra, and maybe you hit a big play or two to one of the outside receivers there and just hand it off to Gibbs and check it down to him and that kind of thing. I still like the Lions to win this game, but I understand where people are going to go for the Rams.
Yeah, I just think the way the Rams offense has been playing, particularly Matthew Stafford, I've always been a big Matthew Stafford guy. I think he's a clear top 10, potentially even top 8 quarterback in the league. I really think he's got that type of ability. Puka Nacua, obviously 1,400-yard rookie wide receiver, Cooper Kupp on the outside. The chemistry that they have in the passing game is obviously remarkable, but also having that key figure in the backfield with how Kyren Williams and this offensive line has been playing, I would say that this is a clear top 5 offense in the NFL. And this sounds like a hot take throughout the season because I think on the totality of the year, the Lions are a better offense. But as of late, I mean, the Rams have scored 30-plus points in 4 of their last 8 games since Matthew Stafford came back from injury. Revenge game spot here, more experienced quarterback in the playoffs for the most part. I mean, to be fair, Jared Goff had that year with the Rams particularly, but more so on their teams. We saw Matthew Stafford win a Super Bowl with the Rams. We haven't seen playoff success yet with Jared Goff in the Lions. And you kind of mentioned being prone to the mistake. We've seen Jared Goff at times, throw bone-ended interceptions or fumble because he has no escapability out of the pocket. Like if Aaron Donald starts making some heat in this game, again, Lions very good offensive line, but Aaron Donald is a one-of-one interior defensive lineman. If he can start getting some real pressure on Jared Goff, I'm really curious to see how he can navigate the pocket, make some plays out of structure, because I don't necessarily think he can. So this would be my veto. I do really feel strongly about the Rams. I honestly think at this current point, 49ers 1, Cowboys 2. I think the Rams are the 3rd best team in the NFC based off current form.
Yeah. I think that the tough thing is the home field advantage for the Lions. They play well at home.
Sure.
They play well in a dome too. Their offense is conducive. They got a bunch of track stars out there as well. So they can kind of get moving with, I don't know, man. I think the key piece of this game is Jahmyr Gibbs. If the Rams can shut down Jahmyr Gibbs, then they'll probably have a pretty easy time cruising to a win.
For sure. So again, like I said, I'm going to use my veto because I really feel strongly about the Rams. So gave you the Texans. I'll take the Rams here. Sets up Rams versus 49ers on this side. And then Texans versus Ravens, we can say pretty confidently on this side because we know where this is going to end up.
Yeah, most likely. The Bills and Steelers game, the line right now is 10 points. The Sharps are actually somewhat on the Steelers in terms of covering 10 points. It's a playoff game. I understand that. But the Bills are catching 68% of the steam on their money line, which is like minus 550. So it's like a high interest savings account type of money line that you're looking at with the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. I think the Bills are live to fuck the game up. I don't think it's outrageous to say that they could turn the ball over, make a bunch of mistakes.
Maybe win by 3.
Yeah, like Stephon Diggs hasn't been the same guy recently. Gabriel Davis looks like he's going to be out for this game, but that might be a good thing because he's always live to make some mistakes. I don't know. This is a pretty easy open and shut case. It should be a Bills victory, but at the same time, the Steelers are pretty scrappy and they're pretty feisty. So I don't want to rule them out completely, but I think the Bills will take care of business.
It's like we could really break down the matchup here, but at the end of the day, it's Josh Allen at home against Mason Rudolph. I know where I'm leaning.
I would be a bold prediction of this game. I expect a quarterback change at some point during the Steelers. I think that Pickett will make an appearance in this game.
If you didn't say for the Steelers, I was going to make a joke. Wow, they're going to bench Josh Allen after throwing 5 picks.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe they'd bench Josh Allen because they're up 5 touchdowns or something like that. But I was going to say
way more likely.
Yeah, I could see the Steelers, getting down early in this game. It's like 17-0 at halftime or something like that. And they come out in the second half with Kenny Pickett and they maybe start to make the game a little bit closer. And the game finishes kind of like 24-17 Bills. And then they cover that 10 points. If I was betting the spread, I 100% would take the Steelers though.
Yeah, this feels like a backdoor cover. Did you say 10 or 10.5? Was there the hook?
It's 10 according to Green Line here. I'd have to look
got bet down to
what
10.
sportsbook.
At one point it was 10.5, which obviously at 10.5, you're absolutely hammering Steelers cover at that point. But at 10, it makes it a little riskier. But like you said, I think this is a backdoor cover type of game. Maybe, the Bills are up 35-24. The Steelers or 38-24. Steelers score a touchdown, make it 38-31 or something like that. Like I could see that happening. Probably not that high scoring for the Steelers. It would probably more so be like 24-17 they cut it to. But regardless, we can move on to your team's matchup on Monday Night Football. A repeat of last year, pretty much. You're playing an NFC East foe, only you're playing my hated rival, your second hated rival too. So
yeah, third year in a row. Actually, we're playing an NFC East team in the first round. Actually, wait, no,
right?
Hold on. Who did we play in the first round in 2021?
You played Washington in 2020. I know that.
Right, yeah, fourth year in a row then. So we played Washington in 2020, Eagles in 2021. Then you guys last year, and now the Eagles
Wild
again
World
this year. So yeah, pretty crazy that's how we're doing this right now. It's pretty easy for me as a Bucs fan to just look at this and be like, hey, they can't stop a nosebleed on defense. We should be able to throw the ball.
No AJ Brown.
No AJ Brown on the other side. Like from our offense to their defense, I think this sets up quite well for us because they don't really have the linebackers to tackle Rachaad White in space if we're able to throw him the ball. They don't have the corners to keep up with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and even over the middle with Cade Otton or whatever. But at the same time, our offense does well against defenses that are bad in totality, not like a run funnel or a pass funnel defense, because I think for some reason, Dave Canales gets all up in his head when he can't operate and execute his offense the way he wants to, which is balanced approach. I want to run the ball to set up the pass the ball to set up the run, and kind of intermingle the two. When he can't do one or the other, he gets all frazzled and he's not able to call a proper game. In addition to the fact that Baker's dealing with a rib injury, it looks like both of his ankles are broken. Like he's hurt as hell right now. But the nice thing is the Eagles are more hurt right now on offense with AJ Brown not playing in this game and Jalen Hurts apparently not able to throw the football.
Finger.
And we're expecting potentially some rain in this game as well in Tampa Bay. So this one, it sets up well for the Bucs. If I had to pick a team, I mean, the Bucs are 3-point underdogs at home. I personally am taking the Bucs, and I'm really trying to set aside as much bias as possible because when you just look at like a vibe check too, like the Eagles are in a fucking tailspin in terms of like what their, locker room and their culture looks like right now. Their best receiver isn't going to play in this game. And the Bucs, to their credit, they can turn it on defense any given Sunday. Sometimes they can't play any defense, but other times you've seen them play like one of the better defenses in the NFL. And we know they're going to stop the run pretty well. So all it takes is being opportunistic as a defense and as a secondary, getting some takeaways. Shout out Antoine Winfield Jr. finally getting some respect. First team All-Pro safety.
Congrats.
I could see him having a big play in this game and being part of the reason why they win this one.
The way I kind of look at this too, by the way, fun fact, underrated narrative is the Julio Jones revenge game, baby. Woo!
Yeah, no kidding.
All jokes aside, I mean, the Eagles are very banged up. You mentioned Baker's dealing with the ribs. He's a warrior. We've seen him fight through injuries throughout the year. I'm not really concerned about him on that regard. I do favor you guys. And I mean, don't mean this as a complete insult, but let's just say both of these teams, if you had to rank the NFC right now, they would probably be in the bottom three, we could say. So, like, if you had to choose the matchup for the Bucs at home, like the Eagles probably would have been your pick outside of maybe the Packers.
Yeah, I definitely would have rather played them than the Cowboys or the Lions or whatever other team or the Rams that we could have played against. So yeah, I definitely like the fact that we're playing Philadelphia. I think it's going to be good news for Baker. I kind of want him to be our quarterback next year on like a Geno Smith, Daniel Jones type of deal. And I know Mike Greenberg will actually structure it properly, unlike those other dumbass teams. It'll be all front loaded so that if Baker sucks next year, then we just cut bait with him in 2025. We draft a quarterback. But I also think both of these coaches sneakily on the hot seat if they lose this game in like embarrassing fashion. I don't think that Sirianni would get fired, but I've also heard a lot of plugged in Eagles people say that they're not ruling it out. And I've also heard the same about the Bucs as well, is that it seems like Todd Bowles is safe for the most part because he's, won 2 straight divisions and, they're making the playoffs. And if they win a playoff game, that would be great news. But at the same time, like if you get absolutely blown off the field like you did in week 3, the first time that you played the Philadelphia Eagles, then we'd probably have a lot of question marks about this team and about this coaching staff too.
For sure. So to make it clear, I'm leaning Bucks. Like you mentioned, you're leaning Bucks as well. So we can move on to the divisional round.
Yeah, I mean, these are hypothetical games, obviously, because we're not going to get everything right. So we're not going to spend quite as much time in terms of like dissecting the matchups and that kind of thing. Let's kick to the AFC. We'll go with the Texans and Ravens to start here. It's pretty easy for Baltimore to get through the Texans. I think there's a lot of good matchup advantages here. They're not very good at stopping the run, which bodes well for the Baltimore Ravens. And also CJ Stroud, even after an emotional win, probably against the Browns, you're facing another tough defense on the road this time instead of in Houston, which they would be playing the Cleveland Browns this week. I think it would be a tall task for CJ Stroud. This is like, when you get a young upstart team that like you feel excited about for the future and they rattle off one playoff win to let you know the future is bright, but then they're kind of reminded that they're not quite in the class of the AFC contenders. That's kind of what this would feel like if the Texans were to play against the Ravens. It's like, hey, great win against Cleveland. That's something we can build around. We didn't have Tank Dell and we still got the win. This is one where it's like you're probably running into just a better football team.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry to Brock if you're still in here for saying this, but it kind of reminds me of, you remember when young Andrew Luck led that big comeback against the Chiefs and then got just absolutely rattled the next round. I think it was by the Patriots. That's kind of what this reminds me of. You get your big emotional win against Cleveland. You basically know, hey, our team traded our past franchise quarterback to this team, turned the reins over to you, and you basically beat the team that he's now on, even though he's not playing in this game. Not to mention, I mean, trying to beat 2 elite defenses in a row is going to be a tough task, especially playing Baltimore on the road. Baltimore is the type of team where if they are the favorite, they are overwhelming because they're so fundamentally sound. Great running game. Obviously, Lamar Jackson as their quarterback, phenomenal player. Their defense, both their secondary and their pass rush has been phenomenal this year. They're the team where if they're playing at the 80th percentile outcome, they're probably the strongest team in the AFC. Now, I would argue maybe we'll talk about in the AFC Championship, if the Bills make the AFC Championship and they're playing closer to that 90th, 95th percentile, I don't think it's set in stone that Baltimore's going to represent the AFC. We'll get into that in a little bit. But in this matchup in particular, this is just as brutal of a matchup you could have possibly had this season. Like if I'm Houston, I would much rather play either the Bills or the Chiefs in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty much, I guess there is a way that they could play them, assuming the Dolphins were to upset the Chiefs or the Steelers were to upset the Bills. But yeah, it's pretty tough draw of getting the Ravens for regardless of this Texans Browns game's outcome, because it's most likely going to go as we have it laid out here, I would imagine. And the Texans or the Browns is going to Baltimore. And that's a difficult task. And honestly, too, like I think the Dolphins, even though they got kind of their doors blown off in week 17, I do think they would match up a lot better with Baltimore as opposed to what Houston kind of represents without the firepower that Miami has. Because that's how you beat Baltimore, right? You get on them early and make them play from behind. And that's what the Dolphins could do if they were hypothetically going to Baltimore.
Yep, I would agree there. We can move on to Chiefs versus Bills. Very, very big rivalry, right? Because you got Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen in the playoffs again. Obviously, we know all the controversy around that big time matchup last time. Mahomes leading them down the field, scoring that touchdown. Like, you're instantly in for a classic when it comes to Chiefs versus Bills. I mean, that playoff matchup, I'm pretty sure both of them had 2 of the 5 or 8 best playoff games of all time in terms of EPA. Like, just insane quarterback play. Now, for what it's worth, Bills obviously a lot of wrinkles on their end. Chiefs not having the same type of pass catchers this year. This is a really, really close matchup for me. But what it comes down to is I trust the Bills' offense and pass catchers more than I do Patrick Mahomes in his pass catchers. They've not been on the same page this year. I believe in their last 8 games, they're only averaging about 21 points per game, bottom 5 in a lot of the offensive metrics. I trust them to get past a team like the Dolphins without the playoff experience. But I do think going on the road against Buffalo, if Josh Allen's playing the way he has been these last few weeks, I got to pick the Bills here. That's my lean. I got to pick the Bills.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I think, I think most people would pick the Bills. But again, the reason we're kind of doing it is both of these teams that we have in the AFC Championship right now haven't quite been able to get over the hump of the Kansas Cities of the world, the Cincinnati's of the world, whatever. It's a weaker conference than we expected because of the injury to Burrow and because of, the Mahomes, like how he's played so far this year. So if the Bills or the Ravens are going to get to the Super Bowl like they've struggled to do so far, even though they've been yearly contenders for 5 or 6 years now, this is the year that you need to do it because the Chiefs are down, the Bengals are down. The Dolphins peaked early. They're not at the right spot right now. The Browns
they also just don't have the quarterback comparatively.
It's a much easier path to get to the Super Bowl if you're Buffalo or if you're Baltimore. And I feel pretty confident that they're the 2 best teams in the AFC. And I think between the AFC and the NFC, I think there's much more competition in the NFC for like 2nd and 3rd and 4th best teams, as opposed to, I think it's clearly Baltimore and Buffalo in like a tier of their own as the best 2 teams in the AFC. But at the same time, you never know what could happen. One of these teams could get upset, so on and so forth. But I feel confident that the AFC Championship should be Ravens and Bills as long as these 2 teams don't beat themselves against one of these opponents.
And honestly, you mentioned the NFC has more indecision. I personally think that it's the same type of deal. I think the Niners are the clear best team right now. I honestly think at this point, the Cowboys, what their body of work suggests, how their offense is played at home, they get two home playoff games where they're going to be favored by 6+ points. I would have a tough time seeing them get knocked out. Again, we'll talk about it in a second when they play the Niners, or maybe not the Niners, in the conference championship. It will be the Niners. But with that being said, if we play you guys at home, if we lost this game, I would be severely impacted by it. I don't see us losing to Tampa. The only team that I see could maybe knock us off in the divisional round here would be the Lions. And to be honest, in this circumstance, I would be shocked if we don't get to the NFC Championship. And if we don't, we're going to have a tough offseason because this is their best chance to potentially get out of the NFC, and you didn't even make it to the NFC Championship. So for me personally, I'm looking at this. Our passing attack, CeeDee Lamb, like, I understand you guys in the first matchup last year had a really good game when we went there, but I think it's going to look offensively kind of similar to what it did in the playoff game. We just have a lot of firepower, and when Dak Prescott's playing confident, when CeeDee Lamb's playing the way he has been, we just got the what's it called? We have the pivotal factors in this game. We have the superstar talent. Micah Parsons on the defensive side, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. I'd argue those are 3 of probably the top 3 players in this game.
Yeah, I could paint a picture where the Bucs at their best could really hang in this game and even potentially win it. It would really take a big time performance from their defense. It would take because Carlton Davis is capable of wiping players off the face of the earth when he's playing at his best. He hasn't played like that pretty much all season, but we have seen it in the past, and we have seen it specifically in playoff atmospheres when they went against Green Bay in their Super Bowl year, when they went against Kansas City in the game in the Super Bowl where Tyreek Hill pretty much did nothing. That was mainly Carlton Davis's doing. So I feel confident that he could actually put up a pretty decent fight to CeeDee Lamb, and especially, knowing Todd Bowles, he's going to send a lot of heat in that situation. But the only path I see to them winning a game like this would be to shut down the Cowboys offense, not to go shot for shot in a shootout type of atmosphere, because I think the pressure would be a little much for Baker, and especially given how he's played the last 2 games against the Saints and the Panthers, and the fact that he's probably still banged up. And if they, knock off Philadelphia, that would be a great win for them. But he's probably still taking some big hits in that game. He's not getting any healthier, I would imagine, going into the divisional round against the Cowboys. So yeah, I think the type of loss or win scenario would be like, we win a close game because we, turn Dak over a couple times. That's the only way we win, I think, against the Cowboys. But the way that there's a couple different paths of us losing. I think the most likely of which is that our offense just can't stack up.
And the way I kind of see, right, if we get off to an early lead in that game and take away, because you mentioned, for example, in terms of play calling, Canales loves having that balance factor to him. If the Cowboys get on you guys early and go up 10-0 and eliminate that run game, and they're able to pin their ears down, get that pass rush going, that would be the route for the Cowboys. And obviously, like you said, you would probably need a couple turnovers in our own end, which we are prone to. Like I can see Tony Pollard fumbling on the goal line against Miami a couple weeks ago type of instance. I can see, Dak throwing a pick because somebody on the line just tips it up and it gets picked like he did against the Commanders last week. Like, there's weird shit that happens in these games. But like you kind of said, assuming everything's not completely wonky, I do expect the Cowboys to be able to win this game. And we'll talk about the next round, but for at least the time being, 2 games at home, I expect them to be able to win.
Yeah, and the last thing I will say is, like, on paper this season, the Cowboys have been the better roster and have, like, more superstar talent. But on any given Sunday, Winfield can bring it. Evans can bring it. Levante
Yeah.
David can bring it. Vita Vea can bring it. Devin White even can bring it, even though he's been pretty inconsistent this year. Like, there's a route where they could actually play a very, very complete game. And that's exactly how we won the Super Bowl the first time is we put all of our complete games in the NFL playoffs, and in the end of the season, we kind of saved the best for last. And that's something that I still think they're capable of doing, even if Baker Mayfield's not Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom Brady gets the best out of his entire team, offense, defense, special teams, whatever. So it would be a tough matchup for us. I would still root for the Bucs, obviously, but I think it would be a hard challenge to take down the Cowboys at home, just given how they've played that this year. So Rams 49ers, again,
very interesting matchup.
Yeah, very interesting. This would be a really fun. I think of the four that we have laid out here, and whether that's Texans or Browns against the Ravens, because we kind of differed on that, this would be the most intriguing, and I think would be the closest game as well. The Chiefs and Bills game also probably pretty intriguing and a close game potentially as well. But the Rams and 49ers, because they're in the same division, they know each other very well. The 49ers, yeah, they have a lot of familiarity there. And the 49ers have Brock Purdy, who played super well in the regular season, got injured against the Eagles last year. We didn't get to see what he would do in like high pressure situations, really. Like they were kind of routing teams most of the time that they were winning games last year. And this year it's been kind of the same. Like in some of the big instances against the Ravens as being one of the examples, he hasn't really shown up. And he had a horrible game against the Ravens, which was like a playoff atmosphere type of game for the 49ers. So this one, it would scare me a little bit, knowing you got one veteran quarterback, has a Super Bowl ring, been in a lot of these big high-pressure situations. One guy's a little bit younger, but the 49ers are at home. They're clearly the more talented team, one of the most talented teams I've pretty much ever seen. The difficult thing here is knowing that you probably have two great coaches, and the quarterbacks could be the thing that win or lose you this game.
The way the Rams win would have to be a relatively similar game to how they won the NFC Championship in 2021, where a couple boneheaded Jimmy Garoppolo plays, San Francisco, I believe, dropped a pick in that game as well. Like some funky shit will have to happen in this game. And not to mention, Brock Purdy is inherently just a better quarterback than what Jimmy Garoppolo was that year. You would need a scenario where the Rams go up like 10-0, maybe Purdy throws a pick. They become one-dimensional. They can't really get CMC going. That would be the blueprint. I really think they're the type of team, the 49ers, where if you can somehow build a double-digit lead on them, I have a hard time seeing them like a Bills team or a Chiefs team or a Cowboys team being able to come back from that type of deficit. But with that being said, this roster's too loaded. Brock Purdy, 95% of the time, has been efficient this year, apart from maybe one or two games. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Again, I think the Rams are the third best team in the NFC right now, but I do think the 49ers should be able to have the edge, which sets up the 1 and 2 seeds on either side of the conferences. We can start with the Bills Ravens. And funny enough, I actually see this as being similar cases to the 2 seed for how they have to win this game. They probably need to have a double-digit lead to be able to beat the Ravens and the 49ers, respectively. The reason why I have more confidence on the Bills getting the upset than I do the Cowboys, and I'm saying that admittedly as a Cowboys fan, is because they have more balance in their offense. The biggest pivotal factor for the Cowboys is what type of Tony Pollard, what type of run offense shows up in the playoffs, because the majority of the season, it has been a very one-dimensional offense. It's been Dak, it's been CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson up the seam. The run game really hasn't been there, both from a run concept standpoint and from an overall performance standpoint from Tony Pollard. So if I had to choose which 2 seed I felt more confident in, it would be the Bills with how James Cook has run the rock as of the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, from a playoff best ball standpoint, this is pretty chalky, obviously. We got the 1 and 2 seeds on either conference. Super Bowl odds would dictate that these are the 4 highest favored odds to win the Super Bowl because they're the 1 and 2 seeds. They're going to get all the home games and so on and so forth. I will say, before I kind of give my thoughts on these 2 games, which one of these 4 teams is most likely to drop a game, do you think, and get bounced? Because I have my answer on it.
It'd be the 49ers for me.
Really? Because I think it's Baltimore.
Really? I think it's a similar case, though. It would be they would fall behind double digits, and they're not really a team that's structured to be able to come back from that type of deficit. And the reason why I would prefer Baltimore to San Francisco is I have more trust in Lamar Jackson than I do Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I also think, both the 2 seeds, they have a harder path to the Super Bowl, right? Because they don't have the bye weeks, and also they have to play, some combination of like the Chiefs, potentially the Lions, or the Eagles, potentially on the Cowboy side of things. So that's just an interesting wrinkle here, just because we kind of went chalky 1-2 on either side. I'm just trying to think through like exactly which of these teams could get upset. And I think if the Browns win today, the game that we're about to see, I mean, the Ravens are live to drop it in the divisional round. I think the Texans match up better with the Browns than they do with the Ravens, because the Texans, I think if they're going to win this game, this is probably all they're going to win. But I think if the Browns beat the Texans on the road, they're live to go to Baltimore, Joe Flacco revenge game, and actually take that one too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Browns are probably, outside of maybe the Bills, the best position to be able to upset the Ravens. And I guess like that's including the fact that it's the Chiefs.
I think the Dolphins are live to do it too. If the Dolphins can get through and get healthy, I think they have a chance to actually upset Baltimore as well.
I have a hard time seeing them to be able to physically match up with a team.
I know they're playing. They're not playing well. That's the difficult thing. I think you have to, like, when the playoffs start, the one thing that you do need to kind of take into account sometimes though is that it like everybody's 0-0, and it doesn't matter how they've been playing as long as how they show up in that game, which is obviously good news for, if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan or Kansas City Chiefs fan or Dolphins fan. You guys haven't been playing very well lately, but you still have an equal opportunity realistically to win any of these games that you're in and go on and make a run or whatever. So, I mean, when it gets to the actual Bills and Ravens and the Cowboys and 49ers, the way that I look at this is I actually believe that this year will be a repeat of last year. I think we will get both 1 seeds in the Super Bowl.
Really? This has been my prediction for a while. I think it's Bills 49ers.
I think the stumble spot is for the Ravens is the divisional round, not the championship round. I think if they lose one, it'll be in the divisional round.
The reason why I kind of believe with Buffalo here is I kind of mentioned earlier my reasoning for it. The Ravens at their 80th percentile is a better team than what Buffalo is. But I do think if Buffalo gets to their 90th, 95th percentile in terms of how they can play as a team, that would indicate to me winning a wild card game, winning a divisional game, getting to the AFC Championship would give me that validation that they could bring their A game. And I do think they're the type of team that can win in multiple facets. And I got to quickly switch to my webcam, so that's not great. But here, we're good now. I personally think that if the Bills are playing their best football, they have more avenues to winning it. With Baltimore, like I said, I don't really think they're a team that when they fall behind can structurally come back, because, I mean, it's still Andrews coming off of an injury. I don't think they have enough firepower on the outside to be able to work off of that type of deficit. Whereas with the Bills, if they get ahead, they've shown they can be able to run the football. Josh Allen obviously contributing both with his legs and with his arm. You're hoping at this point Stephon Diggs is playing his best football, even though he's tailed off these last few weeks. This just tells me it's the Bills' year. The Bills' kryptonite have been the Chiefs, and this is the worst Chiefs team we have seen. I don't know what it is, man. I got to be a little gutty here. We could easily predict the 1 seeds because, I mean, they have been evidently the 2 best teams in football throughout the year. But if I'm going to pick an upset spot in the conference championship, I do like the Bills here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, maybe this is music to your ears. I actually think it's more likely that the Cowboys would win against the 49ers than the Bills against the Ravens. Because I think the crucial thing that I think you're missing, because I think what you said is all sound. The crucial thing that I think you're missing is the Bills have been undisciplined and the Ravens are disciplined.
That's
and
fair.
In the NFL playoffs, I think it could be cold weather in Baltimore too. Like it seems to be the type of spot that the Bills would probably get, let down. And the Ravens could win a gritty, disgusting 20-17 game on the back of 3 Josh Allen turnovers or something like that. And of course, your scenario is very much in the range of outcomes as well, where the Bills get up early and the Ravens aren't able to compete and get ahead. But knowing that Baltimore has been waiting for, this run in 2019, they got picked off in the divisional round after going 14-2. This feels like a little bit more of a different Ravens team. I think if they get through the divisional round, they're live to win the Super Bowl. And obviously it's not saying much because they would only be 2 games after that. But I think their kryptonite is like coming out after the 2-week rest period or whatever of the bye week and getting out hot and taking care of business against either the Texans, the Browns, Dolphins, whatever team they play against.
For sure. So we'll just say here because I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. 1 seed versus 2 seed at home. I do think I'd pick Buffalo, but at the same time, like, fall back here is, again, they're probably going to be like -4 in this game, -5 in this game. So I don't mind that. Cowboys 49ers, very similar case, I would say. I would probably give like a base expectation that if this game was played 100 times, Niners are probably winning that 65 of them, maybe, give or take, 65% chance. the way the Cowboys win is they're going to have to start off fast early. If you fall behind to the 49ers, they will put their foot on your throat and squash you down. You cannot fall behind to this team. You cannot afford them to just get those guys going, especially with how their edge rushers have been playing with Chase Young and with Nick Bosa as of late. It's tough, man. Like, it all depends. If the Cowboys came out in this game, CeeDee Lamb had like 4 catches on the first drive. Dak Prescott's in a rhythm. The one team he has not played well against in the playoffs has been the San Francisco 49ers. And people are so quick to say Dak Prescott, what a playoff choker because he's 2-4 in the playoffs. EPA per play by opponent. So 2016, they played the Packers in the first round at home. 0.21 EPA per play, which would rank as a top 5 mark across an NFL season. They obviously lost that game to Green Bay in that game. Versus Seattle, a little bit less of a game, but like a B type of game. 0.17 EPA per play, obviously beat the Seattle Seahawks. Played on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. 0.35 EPA per play, despite the loss of the Rams, the year that the Rams made the Super Bowl against the Patriots. The 2 real concerning spots on his resume: negative 0.24 EPA per play against the San Francisco 49ers in 2021, negative 0.1 EPA per play against the San Francisco 49ers last year. So the 2 teams that he has played as a below to bad quarterback play against in the playoffs has been the San Francisco 49ers. But the big denominator there is it going to be the same San Fran defense with Steve Wilks as opposed to DeMeco Ryans come playoff time? Is it DeMeco Ryans factor, or is it a San Francisco factor? Who knows? Because we have not beat this team, I cannot for the life of me look you guys in the camera and say, yeah, we're going to walk into Santa Clara and beat the San Francisco 49ers. If it happens, obviously I'm going to be overjoyed, but I can't pick it. Like, I got to be reasonable here. They have beat the shit out of us every single time we played them. What was it? 21 first year. 1912 last year, 23-17 in 2021. And obviously you guys saw what happened this year. I think it's going to be a closer game. I don't think it's going to be a 42-10 type of game, but I see like a 34-23, 34-27 type of San Fran win.
I have this tendency to be dead wrong when it comes to the championship rounds. Like last year, I thought it was going to be San Fran, Cincinnati. I remember the year that the Rams and the Patriots went to the Super Bowl. I was dead set it's going to be Saints and it's going to be Chiefs. That's what the Super Bowl is going to end up being. So my gut is telling me 49ers, Bills. That's what my gut is telling me. I think the 49ers and Bills are going to win these 2 games, which makes me want to go Ravens, Cowboys, because I've been dead wrong on the playoffs the whole time. I don't think that the Cowboys like resume against the 49ers is, necessarily valid, like you said, because the defensive coordinator has changed. Yeah. I think the Cowboys offensive line wise has been in a worse position before than they are right now, which bodes really well for them being able to contain some of those edge rushers. The key piece here is like, I'm not even going to say Tony Pollard needs to have a big day because he just won't. I just don't think he's having a good year, and I don't think he will. The key thing here is it's got to be a CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott takeover like we've seen in other big spots. And it's got to be one of these Brock Purdy games that we've seen 3 or 4 times this year, picks where he's turning the ball over and he's not making sound decisions. And, the first read's not there for him. Second read's not there for him. And he's taking bad sacks and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go Ravens Cowboys is what I'm going to go with. And I'm bag protecting because I have so many fucking Dallas Cowboys stacks in playoff best ball, but I have a good feeling about the Cowboys this year. I think they have a chance to actually go on a run. And same goes with Baltimore. I think both of these teams, it's been difficult for them to get over the hump because of other teams in front of them. And like Miami, I also think San Francisco has peaked a little early as well. They haven't played their best recently, and they've been, obviously dominant September, October, November of this season.
Sounds good. So for fun's sake, we'll predict both as if the Cowboys and Ravens played, and we'll predict as if the Bills and 49ers played, because those are our respective Super Bowls, and kind of talk about how the game would look like. So we'll talk about the Cowboys, Ravens. I'm not going to lie, this would be a really tough matchup. Like, if Lamar Jackson can get loose, I would be extremely concerned. And I just really don't trust our linebackers to be able to stop that ground game. I mean, our run defense, has been exposed multiple times. This would be, like I said, with Buffalo. If you don't get off to a 10-0 win or a 10-0 lead, 13, 14-0 lead against Baltimore, I don't trust our run defense. I don't trust our front seven from a physicality standpoint to be able to handle Baltimore. And unfortunately, if we made the Super Bowl and played the Ravens, I do think the Ravens would win this game.
I agree. I think that's probably what would happen as well. 49ers Bills, if we went with that Super Bowl, I think this is a spot where Buffalo would be able to do it. I think Buffalo would. This is what they want. They want San Fran. They don't want Dallas. And the reason I say that is because I think the style of play that both teams like to play, San Fran and Buffalo, is if they get up early, they step on your throat, like we kind of talked about. And Buffalo, if they got through the gauntlet of, the Steelers, not a bad matchup, but the Chiefs and the Ravens, it would be like just a confidence, like it's a confidence thing, right? Like you beat those two teams, the Chiefs, who've been your kryptonite, and the Ravens, who were the number 1 seed in the conference. It's very reminiscent of when the Bucs like dumpstered the New Orleans Saints. That was their kryptonite. And then they go to Green Bay and beat Green Bay, who was the number 1 seed in the conference that year.
Yeah.
I think the Bills would just have so much momentum on their side. But I mean, the same could be said for the 49ers. I just think the NFC wins would be a little uglier than the AFC wins. If Buffalo is the team that comes out of the AFC, they're going to win sexy. I think they're going to win in ways that make you go, wow, Buffalo's like really the real deal right now. Whereas San Fran, I think they can win in a variety of ways. They can win, a little bit dirtier, a little bit through Christian McCaffrey and playing good defense and stuff like that. If the Bills make the Super Bowl, the only way they get there is by playing strong offense.
Yeah, it would be tough for me at this point. Given like if the Niners won 2 playoff games and made the Super Bowl, at that point it's like, oh, we're waiting for the Purdy turnover. We're waiting for the Purdy turnover. When's it going to happen in the big game? They made it to the Super Bowl. I'm kind of done just counting on that happening. And just on paper, I think the San Francisco 49ers roster is just so overwhelming. It would be a similar case, like we said, for the Cowboys. If the Bills are going to win this game, it would likely they went up 14-0. They forced the 49ers to work from a negative script. I think the Bills, like I said, I have more confidence in them than I do the Cowboys because they're more of a complete offense with how James Cook in the ground game's been playing. I don't mind picking the Bills upset pick. If they do make it to this point, like I said, if I picture them upsetting the Ravens on the road, they can absolutely beat the 49ers in a neutral game in the Super Bowl. So,
I mean, you're also kind of just going, we've seen Josh Allen put on the God mode, glasses, and like, because that game that he lost to Kansas City, like he wins that game 99 times out of 100 if he plays that well. You know what I mean? Like we've seen, like, even though people like to talk about the Bills as kind of like the AFC Cowboys or whatever, they kind of choke in big spots because they got wiped by Cincinnati last year. I don't know, that game against the Chiefs 2 years ago in the playoffs, that was the game that was, supposed to spark the Bills playoff run and the Bills Super Bowl run. And I think he still has that in him. And I think you give him, him and Brock Purdy 1v1. I love Brock Purdy. I'm a Brock Purdy dude, but Josh Allen's just such a superior quarterback. I trust him more in that situation.
I would agree. So to recap again, I would have, we would have the Bills 49ers. If that was the matchup, we would have the Ravens over the Cowboys if that was the matchup. And I'm saying that without the fan goggles, man. I literally didn't I literally had a scenario where the Cowboys made the Super Bowl and I predicted them to lose. So if you guys want to hate on that, go ahead. But I think
people are recognize that you went a little less biased than usual there. I'll go through a couple comments here before we get started with the game.
What are you giving back, Jared?
If we win, I want a free Dynasty coaching session with both of you. This is if you lose to the Packers, he's saying.
What are you giving if the Cowboys win then?
Yeah, facts. What do we get out of it? Is what my response would be to that.
And by the way, you said that everybody's counting out the Packers. I felt I gave them a relatively fair review. I said Jordan Love's playing like a top 10 level quarterback. The offense has looked really good. I honestly just think it's a tough matchup for you because on paper, the Cowboys roster just matches up well against the Packers. Again, I think this can be a high scoring game, and you guys are a live dog in this game if you score enough points, but realistically, it's going to be a shootout, and I just trust the Cowboys offense more than even as good as the Packers been playing the Packers offense.
Yeah, it's weird. We've seen, I remember early on in the year, do you remember there was like a period of time where Jordan Love couldn't score in the first half of games?
Dude, it was great. And then he just clicked. And I'm going to give him
he did just click, but I still think part of me in his first playoff performance, that might come out a little bit and they might get down early. And again, we've talked about pretty much the Cowboys. It's difficult to just, get down early to anybody in the NFL playoffs and come back and win it, let alone a team like the Cowboys that should be able to get things done if they get up early. We have a question here from Mystic Flame here. He says, 12-team Superflex Dynasty, start 11. I have Njoku, but should I give the 109 for Pitts? At this point, dude, I think the 109 is more valuable than Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the 109.
If it's a one quarterback 109, that would probably change my answer to Pitts. But what is the percentage chance that Pitts ever becomes a top 5 redraft tight end? He has a top 5 season in the next 2 to 3 years.
I feel confident about him doing it next year if they get the right coach and the right quarterback.
I don't feel I don't feel confident about it. I think he can do it. I just don't feel confident. Like I would say that he's going to be like the tight end. Even like a good coach comes in, a half decent quarterback, he's still the tight end 7 or 8 off the board probably in redraft leagues, which makes me think, hey, if he's not going to produce next year, what's his value going to actually be? His value is volatile to the point that if he doesn't produce next year, he might be in Noah Fant territory a year from now.
I don't see that because this is still a guy who, as a rookie, was the tight end 6, had over 1,000 yards, and he was the tight end 6 on only 2 touchdowns or 1 touchdown on the year. So I keep coming back to the fact if they do have solid quarterback play, whether they trade for a Fields, whether they draft a quarterback, I do believe in the Kyle Pitts bounce back. Now, with that being said, in a start 11, with you already having Njoku, this is about fair market value for Pitts, and because you have Njoku and you need that depth in that type of format, I'm going to keep the 109 because I think realistically with the 109 in the start 11, you could potentially get a flex player. You can potentially get a wide receiver 2. Let's just say hypothetically, a guy like Brian Thomas might be available at the 109 if he goes first round. Maybe a quarterback, a 4th quarterback goes in the first round, assuming that it's Drake, assuming that it's Caleb, assuming that's Jaden Daniels. If Michael Penix goes in the first round, he's probably going to be gone by pick 109, meaning that somebody else is going to drop. So I just think at this point in particular, like maybe after the NFL draft, you want to revisit that because it didn't surface as what you would have liked. Maybe there's only 2 first round quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels fell to the second, a lot of bad landing spots. If you want to revisit it, then sure. But the buying power of that pick at this point, I wouldn't move it.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, if you have Njoku, like it's a pretty cut and dry situation. There's no reason to sell draft capital for Kyle Pitts if you have Njoku.
Agreed.
Like that's exactly what Pionio says here.
Yep.
Fletcher said live react my trade here. Do you see which league that is? I don't actually have noties on for Sleeper right now.
So it's FSC Listener League Dino. So I'll read it off. So he ended up receiving Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, and the 308 in exchange for Dalton Kincaid, the 2025 third, and the 2024 210. So it's the Fletsky 2025 third, which should be about a mid type of third round pick.
The nuts and bolts of this trade is 210 for Dobbins feels like about a wash for me in Superflex.
I would take the 210. I'm worried about Dobbins.
I personally would take Dobbins, actually. I think
with the Achilles,
knowing that this running back class is pretty weak, the wide receiver class about 2.4, 2.5 area would start to taper off a little bit. I still like Dobbins enough that I would be comfortable giving up a late second round for him, but I wouldn't give up any more than that.
I learned my lesson from Cam Akers. I'm not touching him with a second round pick.
I learned my lesson from Cam Akers too, but the difference between those 2 players is that J.K. Dobbins was significantly more talented than Cam Akers before his Achilles tear.
Sure, but we have no evidence of a running back being able to really.
No, we don't. You're right. It's not a good situation. That's why I said a late second rounder, 210 feels about the price tag. I'm absolutely 100%. That's the most I would pay. I'm more
so at a mid to late third.
Ironically, by the way, Andrews and Dobbins, both players that I drafted in this Listener Dynasty League, and I traded last offseason.
You traded Andrews
when I
to
was
me,
tearing it down. What's up?
Am I tripping? I traded Andrews. No, I drafted. To Caden drafted Andrews. Then I traded Andrews to you, and then you traded Andrews to Clowning Dion, and then he traded him to Gus Buster. What?
Yeah, I don't actually remember what I traded Andrews for. I'm gonna actually take a look real quick.
But so let's just say for ease sake, I personally would value him more so as the third. So for me, I would do Dobbins equals the 2025 third. And then at that point, it's Andrews in the 308 for Kincaid in the 210. I'm a little bit more concerned with Kincaid in terms of potentially being that difference maker tight end versus a guy like Mark Andrews. And not to mention, like Fletsky said, he does also have Lamar in this league. So I actually really like your side here. Gus Buster, more of a rebuilding team. So I don't mind him in his perspective upgrading his picks. But from your perspective, as more of a house money team, potentially being a frisky playoff team next year, getting Mark Andrews production over Dalton Kincaid, I would much rather. So I actually like your perspective.
It looks like I sold Alvin Kamara and Mark Andrews last offseason, which is, hefty players that I ended up selling. And I received Clowning Dion's 2024 first, which I believe was pretty late. I think it's 109 maybe. Let me actually take a look real quick because I also got a second rounder from Clowning Dion's, which became, let me actually take a look at the rookie draft from last year. Clowning Dion's a second rounder. I got Jaden Reed in that trade, so that was pretty good. So I got Jaden Reed and let's see can you check real quick where Clowning Dion's first is
this year?
Yeah.
Did he make the playoffs?
He did. I have it right here actually.
Like the 107
so Clowning
probably.
Dion's, his first is the 107. So
Yeah.
I got the 107
Rome.
and Jaden Reed for Mark Andrews and Kamara. I mean, like at face value, I think that's relatively fair. It is a half tight end premium league, so Andrews like should hold a lot of value. And Kamara obviously had a great year for him.
I don't think
at the same
FSC's
time, like I was really tearing it down. I was tearing it right down. So
I don't think
getting
FSC is
pretty
a tight end
decent
premium.
value there is fine.
I don't think the FSC league is tight end premium.
Is it not a tight end premium?
I don't believe it is because we did it. We had this startup what 2020, right, or 2021, and that was before I think we started implementing it. But regardless, like in your perspective, like obviously that's worked out phenomenally for you. You got a potential top 25-ish level dynasty wide receiver, and the 107, which is probably going to be a top 15 dynasty wide receiver when he gets drafted.
Yeah, my team is in pretty rough shape at the moment. Like I have the. Do I have the 101 in this league? I think I do.
No, you lost
the 102. I have the 102 in this league, and Fields is the only conceivable quarterback that I have as like a lockdown starter. The rest of my quarterbacks are kind of just like random dudes. So 107 and a 110 is my other first rounders that I need to add some pieces. I have like some okay wide receivers, but no studs. And then I have nothing at running back pretty much. So yeah, my team's still in pretty rough shape in that league because I was competing for a couple of years and then I had to tear it down.
Yeah, we got the
get out of here. Yeah, Pionio says 10-team Superflex sent Bijan in 2 early thirds to get 101 with intentions to draft Marvin Harrison Jr.
That cost,
I don't love selling Bijan in general right now because I think he's a good buy low, but for this cost, I think that's probably fine.
Yeah, I mean 2/3 to move from Bijan to Marv. Don't get me wrong, like obviously I'm still really high on Bijan, but at the same time, give me the generational potential wide receiver over the running back.
That's like literally exactly how I would value Bijan too. Like 101 versus Bijan in a vacuum, which one are you taking?
101 versus like I would say probably
he said super flex too. So I mean, I personally wouldn't draft Marvin at 101. If I were you, Pionio, I would trade down to 102 and take Marvin and see if somebody's going to come up for Caleb. But I mean, your league, maybe it's a 10-team super flex, so Caleb loses a little bit of value.
He's in Ohio,
maybe people are going to take Marvin at 101 if you don't take him.
I mean,
whatever you got to do, I think that's fine.
Not to mention, he's got the Trey Sermon PFP, so I'm assuming you're probably an Ohio State fan. You probably want Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I'm not going to fault you for that. Like, really.
Yeah, that's fair. He also sent away Herbert for Joey B to stack with Chase. Yeah, I actually prefer Burrow to Herbert in Dynasty, so I'm fine with that.
I prefer Herbert, but at the same time, if you're getting the stack value, I don't hate that. But I just think we've seen personally that Herbert has outperformed him in fantasy and is a few years younger. So I would want a little plus if I moved off of Herbert, but at the same time, I don't think it's bad at all.
Yeah, and Bailey hops in here, says he's been reffing some hockey games. Love to see that. 102 is pissed at taking Marvin. Not sure I could trade back for him. Yeah, that's fair. If you got to take him. It's 10-team super flex. I think that's probably the cutoff that I would say I'm okay taking Marvin if you absolutely wanted to in a 10-team versus a 12-team because quarterbacks lose a smidge of value there. But yeah, the game is actually on right now. So good luck to everybody that's a Texans fan, a Browns fan, a Dolphins, Chiefs fan, Cowboys fans, all that stuff. We definitely rooting for you, specifically if you guys are a Cowboys, a Chiefs, Bills, or a Dolphins fan. That's where a lot of my stake happens in playoff best ball. Unfortunately, the Dolphins and Chiefs are playing each other, so one of those teams is going down in flames. Hopefully, it's the Dolphins because I drafted a lot of those Dolphins players when they were expensive, so the closing line value of that ADP is probably awful.
Yeah, sorry, I have to show this because I'm just laughing because this is like the most ironic post I've ever seen. But so there was a meme on Twitter. It was option A, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore to DJ Moore / Rome Odunze. It's like the Jamar Chase meme all over again. Right. And then the other one was option B, Justin Fields like getting hit in the backfield because he held onto the ball for too long, and Marvin Harrison waving his hand like he's wide open. But it's just so funny because
is it like the same like caricature? Yeah, it is the same caricature that we got here.
This is the funniest quarterback prospect you could use to make this joke about Justin Fields held onto the ball for too long about Caleb Williams. Like, Caleb is not going to hold on to the ball for too long. Yeah. You could have said
he might have like the longest time of holding the ball of any quarterback prospect I've seen.
And like, don't get me wrong, obviously I love Caleb and I would take him first overall, but at the same time, it's so funny how you're saying held on to the ball for too long for Justin Fields, and that apparently just doesn't apply to Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I think Drake would be the better quarterback to say that, we're just going to get the ball
Yes.
out deal. Like Drake is better at that than Caleb for sure. I'm
I
excited
agree.
about Drake, dude. I feel like he's going to
He's
be
so
this
good, dude.
class's like CJ Stroud, where everyone kind of just overthinks him and doesn't like want to draft him. And, the Daniels versus Drake stuff is going to start happening, especially from a fantasy perspective. And that's exactly what happened with Richardson and Stroud last year. So, yeah, I could see Drake, like, because people are going to look at Drake and be like, oh, like, Jaden Daniels better as a runner. It's like, dude, Drake rushed for like 800 yards. Like, he's still also a very good runner.
Oh, yeah. So the
Anyways,
game is on, so we will close off. Appreciate you guys for
yep.
tuning in for as long as you did. We did make our official predictions. If you're watching it on replay, comment what you think about their predictions. Maybe you're like Jared and you want to comment in the section. Packers are going to beat the Ravens in the Super Bowl. Feel free to do that. If you're a Rams fan saying, yo, we're taking down the 49ers and then we're setting up that NFC Championship in Dallas against the Cowboys, go ahead and comment that. If you're an Eagles fan and you're upset that we're on the Bucs bandwagon here and you want to call me a biased Cowboys fan and the Bucs fan picking against this team, feel free to do that, man. We love interacting with you guys. Appreciate you guys for that continued support.
Yeah, for sure. And also some cool news. I did finish my wide receiver draft class database for the 2024 class today. So all the data, like nobody has it right now. Breakout ages, dominator ratings, all that shit. I collected it all myself. So nobody else has that data. And I should be dropping that at some point on the site. If you guys are Flock Fantasy site subscribers, I'll be dropping that soon. And also, I'm starting to contextualize how the draft prospect model is going to work and how it's actually going to be predictive and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping to have that done before the draft, like March, April time. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but it should be pretty cool to have like an official prospect model to go off of for future years, especially once that stuff is all set up. Then, next year it's way easier to get that information right away.
Yes, sir.
Anyways, take it easy, fellas. Good luck.